Chapter 1. Arrival at Dunraven Manor. The wind howled across St. Kilda's Rock, a desolate speck of Scottish earth thrust defiantly into the Atlantic as if daring the sea to claim it. It was the autumn of 1932, and a storm brewed on the horizon, its dark clouds rolling in like an advancing army. Dunraven Manor stood atop the island's cliffs, a sprawling Victorian edifice of Gothic spires and ivy-clad stone, its silhouette stark against the bruised sky. Gargoyles leered from the eaves, their granite eyes glinting wetly in the mist, while the grounds, once manicured into submission, now sprawled wild, a tangle of overgrown hedges and skeletal trees clawing at the fog. The isolation was palpable, a heavy shroud that pressed against the soul, and within it, the manor waited, grand yet foreboding, its secrets whispering through the creak of its ancient bones. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective of impeccable moustache and unparalleled mind, stepped from the swaying motorboat onto the rocky shore, his patent leather shoes clicking with disapproval against the damp stone. He adjusted his overcoat against the wind's insolence and cast a discerning eye toward the manor above. He had been summoned by Lord Archibald Dunraven, a reclusive millionaire whose passion for rare artifacts rivaled Poirot's own love of order. The invitation had promised the unveiling of a Mesopotamian relic, a treasure of such antiquity and value that it warranted the presence of a man of Poirot's distinction. Yet, as he ascended the winding path, the air thick with salt and unease, Poirot sensed that this weekend would demand more of him than mere admiration. At the manor's great oak doors, Mr. Higgins, the butler, awaited, a tall, stoop-shouldered figure whose lined face bore the weight of years in service. His black suit was immaculate, his manner as rigid as the iron knocker he grasped to announce the new arrival. "Monsieur Poirot," he intoned, his voice a low rumble, "Lord Dunraven bids you welcome. The others have already arrived." With a creak that echoed through the cavernous hall, the doors swung inward, revealing a world of shadowed opulence. The entrance hall was a study in grandeur, velvet drapes in deep crimson-framed tall windows, their panes rattling under the storm's assault. A marble fireplace roared, casting flickering light across a chandelier that glittered like a constellation trapped in crystal. Portraits of stern Dunraven ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes tracking Poirot as he handed his hat and cane to the silent Mary, a maid whose youthful face flickered with nervous curiosity. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and wax, yet beneath it lingered something colder, an undercurrent of tension that Poirot's keen senses could not ignore. Lord Archibald Dunraven emerged from the drawing-room, a figure of imposing presence despite the slight stoop of age. His silver hair gleamed under the gas lamps, and his sharp blue eyes carried the intensity of a man accustomed to command. "Monsieur Poirot," he exclaimed, his voice rich with a Scots burr, "I am honored you accepted my invitation. Come, meet my guests. This relic shall be a triumph for us all." His enthusiasm was genuine, yet Poirot noted the faintest tremor in his hand as he gestured toward the room beyond. Within the drawing-room, the assembled company turned as one, their faces a gallery of curiosity, wariness, and veiled intent. Lady Eleanor Dunraven stood by the fireplace, a vision of icy beauty in a gown of midnight silk. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, but her green eyes held no warmth as they met Poirot's bow. "My husband's latest obsession," she said coolly, her tone slicing through the crackle of the fire. "I trust you'll find it worth the journey." The words were polite, yet they carried the sting of a woman long resigned to a loveless cage. Beside her, Captain James Sinclair rose from an armchair, his military bearing undimmed by retirement. His grey moustache bristled as he offered a firm handshake, though his dark eyes flickered with a restlessness Poirot found intriguing. "Archibald and I go back to the war," he said gruffly. Good to see a man of your reputation join us." His grip was strong, but Poirot sensed a shadow beneath the soldier's stern facade. Next, Dr. Alastair Campbell, a lean man with a physician's steady hands, or so they seemed at first glance, and a scholar's thoughtful brow, inclined his head in greeting. As he adjusted his spectacles, Poirot noticed a slight tremor in his fingers, and a faint, almost imperceptible scent of something medicinal like morphine wafted briefly in the air. Curious, Poirot thought, but not yet significant. "A pleasure, Monsieur Poirot," Campbell murmured, his voice calm as still water. "Lord Dunraven speaks highly of your mind. I suspect we'll have much to discuss." His spectacles caught the light, masking his eyes, yet Poirot marked the quiet confidence of a man at ease with secrets. Miss Clara Fairfax, a young woman with bright hazel eyes and a notebook clutched like a shield, approached with a smile that belied her intensity. "The famous Hercule Poirot!" she exclaimed, her voice tinged with excitement. "I'm here to write about the relic for the Antiquarian Review. What a story this will be." Her eagerness was disarming, but Poirot wondered what depths her curiosity might plumb. Mr. Charles Worthington, a dealer in rare artifacts, exuded charm as he extended a manicured hand. His tailored suit and silver cufflinks bespoke wealth, yet his smile was too practiced. "A fellow connoisseur, I presume," he said smoothly. "The relic is extraordinary. I'd wager it's worth more than this manor itself." Beside him, Mrs. Beatrice Worthington fidgeted with her pearls, her pale face taut with unease. "It's quite overwhelming," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind's wail. The servants hovered at the edges. Mrs. McTavish, the cook, a stout woman with flour-dusted hands, nodded curtly from the doorway. Old Tom, the groundskeeper, lingered near the hall, his weathered face half hidden beneath a cap, his eyes darting to the storm beyond. The household was complete, a tableau of disparate lives drawn together by Lord Dunraven's prize. Lord Dunraven spoke animatedly of the relic's provenance, his words punctuated by the clatter of silver and the storm's growing fury. Lady Eleanor sat silent, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Captain Sinclair's curt replies hinted at old wounds. Dr. Campbell listened with polite detachment, while Miss Fairfax's questions grew sharper, probing at edges Poirot noted with interest. Mr. Worthington's flattery rang hollow, and Mrs. Beatrice shrank further into herself, her fork trembling. As the clock struck 9, the storm reached a crescendo, its winds shrieking through the chimneys like a banshee's cry. Poirot, ever observant, watched the faces around him, the little grey cells of his mind already stirring. He could not yet name the disquiet that gnawed at him, but he knew it was there, a thread of malice woven into the fabric of this night. Dunraven Manor, with its hidden passages and watchful shadows, held its breath, poised for the tragedy that would soon unfold. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the truth, would be ready. Chapter 2. The Unveiling. The storm raged unabated as night cloaked Dunraven Manor, its fierce gusts hurling themselves against the ivy-clad stone like a restless spectre. Within the drawing-room, a haven of flickering firelight and velvet shadows. The air thrummed with expectation. The guests stood loosely gathered around a pedestal draped in crimson, their silhouettes sharp against the glow of the marble hearth. Lord Archibald Dunraven stepped into the circle of light, his silver hair catching the chandelier's gleam, his Scots burr a low rumble as he spoke. "My friends, tonight we stand on the threshold of history." With a swift motion, he unveiled a small stone tablet, its ancient carvings whispering secrets from a time long buried. A ripple of awe passed through the room. Miss Clara Fairfax, the young journalist, stepped forward, her hazel eyes wide with wonder. "Extraordinary," she breathed, her notebook clutched tightly. the stories it could tell. Her reverence was palpable, though a flicker of ambition danced beneath it. Mr. Charles Worthington, the artifact dealer, leaned in, his polished charm unable to mask a glint of greed. "Remarkable," he murmured, his tone smooth as velvet. "Its value must be incalculable." Beside him, Mrs. Beatrice Worthington twisted her pearls, her nervous gaze darting about as if the shadows might swallow her whole. Captain James Sinclair stood rigid by the fireplace, his military bearing unyielding. "Impressive work, Archibald," he said curtly, though his dark eyes lingered on the tablet with an edge of something deeper. Resentment, perhaps. Dr. Alistair Campbell, the physician, adjusted his spectacles with a calm that seemed almost too perfect. "A Sumerian marvel," he observed, his voice measured. "A significant find indeed." Yet his stillness hinted at guarded depths. Lady Eleanor Dunraven, seated in a high-backed chair, regarded the scene with icy detachment. "Another bauble to clutter the shelves," she remarked sharply, her emerald eyes flicking to her husband. "I hope it justifies the fuss." The barb hung in the air, a testament to the rift between them. Hercule Poirot stood unobtrusively at the room's edge, his neat figure dwarfed by the grandeur, yet radiating quiet authority. His keen eyes roamed the assembly, cataloguing each reaction with meticulous precision. Lord Archibald's passion was a beacon, but one that might draw danger. Miss Fairfax's zeal seemed overly bright, Mr. Worthington's interest too calculated, Captain Sinclair's nod too restrained. Dr. Campbell's calm was a mask, and Lady Eleanor's disdain a weapon. The servants, Mr. Higgins, the steadfast butler, Mrs. McTavish, the stout cook, Mary, the timid maid, and old Tom, the weathered groundskeeper, hovered at the periphery, their presence a silent chorus to the unfolding drama. As the guests dispersed to examine the relic, Poirot glided among them, his presence subtle yet inescapable. He paused by Miss Fairfax, who scribbled furiously. "You are most industrious, mademoiselle," he said softly, his voice laced with inquiry. "This relic, it holds a particular fascination for you, no?" She looked up, a flush colouring her cheeks. "It's a journalist's dream, Monsieur Poirot. A storm, a manor, a treasure. What more could one ask?" Her smile was radiant, but Poirot detected a shadow beneath it. "Indeed," he replied, his moustache twitching faintly. "But one must be cautious. The pursuit of stories can lead one into perilous waters." She nodded, her smile faltering, before returning to her notes. Poirot's gaze shifted to Mr. Worthington, now in hushed conversation with Lord Archibald. "You must consider its worth, Archibald," the dealer urged. "A piece like this could secure your legacy." Lord Archibald's response was firm. "It's not for sale, Charles. It's history, meant to endure." The rebuff was sharp, and Mr. Worthington's charm soured into a fleeting grimace. The storm swelled, its wails piercing the manor's walls as the guests settled with brandy. Poirot noted Lady Eleanor's lingering glance at Captain Sinclair, laden with unspoken meaning, and the captain's tight-jawed avoidance of it. Dr. Campbell engaged Poirot in a discussion of the relic's origins, his knowledge vast, but his manner guarded. "You are well-versed, Doctor," Poirot observed. "Is this a passion of yours?" Campbell smiled faintly. "A shared interest with Archibald. It binds us." The words were careful, and Poirot sensed a thread to tug later. Dinner followed in the dining hall, a vast space where a long oak table gleamed beneath another chandelier, its candles trembling. The meal was lavish, roast, pheasant, and claret, yet the air grew heavy with tension. Lord Archibald spoke of the relic's journey, his enthusiasm clashing with Lady Eleanor's silence and Captain Sinclair's curt replies. Miss Fairfax's questions sharpened, Mr. Worthington's flattery rang hollow, and Mrs. Beatrice shrank further into herself. As the clock struck 10, Lord Archibald rose, his face pale but resolute. "The storm demands rest," he said, a weariness tinging his voice. "Good night." The guests drifted away with murmured farewells, their voices swallowed by the manor's cavernous depths. Poirot remained, his small figure framed by the dying embers, his eyes tracing the relic's faint gleam. A sudden rustle drew his gaze. Mrs. Beatrice Worthington, retreating toward the library, her face a mask of pallor and dread. The sight stirred him, a ripple across the calm surface of his thoughts. Something was amiss in this grand house, something that beckoned his scrutiny. He turned toward his room, the storm's howl a fitting echo to the unease now settling within him. Chapter 3. The Storm and the Crime. The storm descended upon St. Kilda's Rock with a ferocity that seemed to shake the very soul of Dunraven Manor, its clock tolling 10 as the tempest's full wrath broke loose. The wind, a wild and mournful force, tore at the ancient windows, rattling them in their frames and sending tendrils of cold creeping into the grand old house. Beyond the walls, the sea roared like a beast unchained, clawing at the cliffs with white-fanged waves, while within the air was thick with the unspoken tensions of the evening. The manor, a sentinel of Victorian splendor atop its rugged perch, stood resolute yet somehow fragile, as if it sensed the shadow creeping closer through the gale. In the dim sanctuary of his study, Lord Archibald Dunraven sat alone, the flickering gaslight casting long shadows across his lined face. The Mesopotamian relic rested on his desk, its carved surface glinting with an almost malevolent calm, a silent witness to the night's disquiet. He reached for the decanter, the crystal clinking faintly as he poured a measure of brandy, the amber liquid trembling in his unsteady grasp. He took a sip, but it did little to ease the weight that pressed upon him, a weight born not just of the storm, but of something deeper, something that had stirred in the hours before. Outside, the wind howled on, a fitting chorus to the unease that gripped him. A shadow moved beyond the study door, its presence cloaked by the storm's relentless din. The handle turned with a whisper, and the figure slipped inside, as stealthy as a cat stalking its prey. "What do you want at this hour?" Lord Dunraven demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion as he looked up, his blue eyes narrowing. The intruder stepped closer, their features lost to the gloom. "We must speak," they said, their words taut with intent. Lord Dunraven rose, gripping the desk's edge. "Leave, now." But the figure advanced, and in one fluid motion produced a coarse rope from beneath their cloak. Lord Dunraven's cry was swallowed by the storm as the rope tightened around his throat, his hands flailing in vain. Within moments, he slumped forward, lifeless, the relic gazing on undisturbed. In the servants' quarters, Mary, the young maid, tossed restlessly beneath her thin blanket. The storm's fury was enough to unsettle anyone, but a deeper disquiet kept her awake, a sense of foreboding that clung to the manor like the ivy on its stones. She sat up, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and resolved to check on the household. Perhaps a task would steady her nerves. As she padded through the dimly lit corridors, a sliver of light beneath the study door caught her eye. Lord Dunraven must still be awake, she thought. She hesitated, then knocked softly. Silence answered. She knocked again, louder, but the stillness persisted. A chill prickled her spine, and with a trembling hand she pushed the door open. The sight wrenched a scream from her lips. Lord Dunraven lay slumped over his desk, his face a ghastly purple, the rope taut around his neck. The relic sat beside him, its ancient eyes seeming to mock the scene, untouched and indifferent. Mary's cry pierced the manor, reverberating through its halls and shattering the uneasy slumber of its inhabitants. Footsteps thundered in response, a chaotic symphony of alarm as guests and servants converged on the study. Hercule Poirot arrived swiftly, his small, neat figure cutting through the gathering crowd with an air of quiet command. His keen eyes swept the room, absorbing every detail. Lord Dunraven's lifeless form, the coarse rope, its texture unmistakably nautical, foreign to the manor's refined interiors, and the relic, serene amidst the horror. The window was locked, its rusted latch unyielding. The door bore no signs of forced entry. The killer, Poirot deduced, had entered with permission, perhaps even by invitation. Lady Eleanor Dunraven stood at the threshold, her hand at her throat, though her emerald eyes betrayed more surprise than sorrow. Captain James Sinclair's face was a mask of stone, his fists clenched as if ready to strike an unseen foe. Dr. Alistair Campbell moved forward, his physician's instinct urging action, but Poirot's voice halted him. "Touch nothing, Doctor," he said firmly. "This is now a place of crime." Mr. Charles Worthington trembled, his charm dissolved into pallor, while Mrs. Beatrice clung to his arm, her breaths shallow and ragged. Miss Clara Fairfax, though shaken, clutched her notebook, her journalist's curiosity warring with her fear. Mr. Higgins, the butler, stood rigid, his composure fractured by the sight before him. Poirot turned to him. "Secure the manor, Monsieur Higgins. No one leaves until we can reach the authorities." The butler faltered. "The storm, Monsieur Poirot. The telephone line is down. We are trapped." "Then we must act ourselves," Poirot replied, his tone resolute. "The murderer is among us." A heavy silence fell, broken only by the wind's relentless wail. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering near the rope. Its roughness and faint scent of salt water and tar spoke of its origin. "This rope," he murmured, "it is not of the household. It comes from the sea, the boathouse, perhaps." Dr. Campbell, peering over his shoulder, noted, "The marks suggest a fierce struggle. He did not go quietly." Poirot nodded, his mind already threading the clues together. He examined the desk, papers scattered, some crumpled in anger, and a half-written note in Lord Dunraven's hand. "I cannot ignore what I have discovered. The truth must—" The sentence broke off, the pen abandoned beside it. What truth had he unearthed? Poirot wondered. Had it been his death warrant? A soft gasp drew his attention. Miss Fairfax lingered at the door, her face pale, her eyes wide. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "is it truly murder?" "It appears so, mademoiselle," he replied, his gaze steady. "But we must wait for the facts to speak." She nodded, trembling. "I was in the garden earlier, despite the storm. I thought I saw someone near the boathouse, a shadow, but it was too dark." Poirot's interest sharpened. "You saw someone? Could you name them?" "No," she admitted. "I thought it might be old Tom, checking the boats, but now—" "Merci, mademoiselle. That is most valuable." The boathouse again, linked to the rope. A thread was forming, one he would follow. He guided her to the drawing-room, where the others waited in tense silence. Lady Eleanor sat apart, her expression unreadable. Captain Sinclair paced, a caged lion. Dr. Campbell spoke softly to Mr. Worthington, who seemed on the verge of collapse. Mrs. Beatrice had retired, attended by Mary. Poirot addressed them. "Mes amis, a grave crime has occurred. Until the storm subsides and we can summon aid, I must ask your cooperation. I will speak with each of you in turn. For now, return to your rooms and refrain from discussion. Clarity is our ally." Murmurs followed, but they obeyed, dispersing with heavy steps. Poirot glimpsed old Tom in the hall, his weathered face etched with worry, and marked him for questioning. Poirot lingered in the study, the door shut against the murmurs of the household beyond. The room lay still, a grim stage where death had played its part. The air heavy with the mingled scents of brandy and the sea's faint, briny echo. He bent once more beside the body, his sharp eyes tracing the rope's rough coils, its texture so at odds with the study's polished elegance. A single strand, fine as a spider's thread, dangled from the desk's corner, a mute clue to the violence that had unfolded. He straightened, his mind alive with questions that darted like shadows in the storm. The rope, the boathouse, the figure glimpsed in the garden. Pieces of a riddle yet unsolved. Hercule Poirot, however, was not one to shrink from such a challenge. With a final measured look at the scene, he stepped to the door, the soft click of its closing lost in the wind's ceaseless wail. Outside, the tempest battered on, a wild symphony to the night's dark drama. But within Dunraven Manor, a subtler storm was rising, one woven of secrets and suspicion. The truth lay hidden, coiled tight as the rope itself, and Poirot knew it would take all his cunning to unravel it before the dawn. Chapter 4. The Investigation Begins. The storm's relentless howl battered St. Kilda's Rock as a pale dawn struggled through the manor's heavy curtains. In the drawing-room, an oppressive stillness hung over the assembled guests, their faces etched with unease. Hercule Poirot stood by the hearth, his compact figure a calm anchor amid the restless shifting around him. His keen grey eyes moved from Lady Eleanor's poised elegance to Captain Sinclair's stiff posture, Dr. Campbell's quiet composure, and Miss Fairfax's trembling fingers, each a study in concealed truths. The crime that bound them here loomed unspoken, its weight palpable in the air. Poirot stepped forward, his voice a measured thread cutting through the tension. "Mes amis, we are trapped by both storm and sin, and I shall uncover the truth through your words. Let us begin, for the devil hides in the details." Lady Eleanor Dunraven sat in a high-backed chair by the fire, her black silk gown accentuating her auburn hair, pinned with austere precision. "Madame," Poirot said, his tone soft yet probing, "you retired early last night, oui? A headache, I understand. Tell me of your evening." Her emerald eyes met his with cool defiance. "I left the dining hall after dinner. The wine and relic chatter were tiresome. I sought my room, closed the door, and stayed there. The storm drowned all else." Her words were crisp, a shield against intrusion. "No sounds reached you? No footsteps, no cry from the study?" Poirot tilted his head, his mustache quivering faintly. "None," she replied, her voice steady. "The wind was a banshee, Monsieur Poirot. It swallowed everything." Her composure was flawless, yet a shadow, relief or calculation, flickered in her gaze. "And your marriage?" he ventured. "It was perhaps not a union of great affection." Her lips tightened. "An arrangement, nothing more. Archibald had his relics and charities. I had my solitude. His death frees me, perhaps, but little else changes." Her tone was dismissive, but Poirot caught the lie beneath. "Merci, madame," he said with a slight bow, stepping back. Cold ambition. Inheritance, perhaps. Next, Poirot approached Captain James Sinclair, standing by the window, his soldier's frame rigid, hands clasped behind him as he stared into the storm. "Captain," Poirot began, "you were in the library last night, no? Tell me of your time there." Sinclair's dark eyes flicked to him, wary. "Aye, after dinner I took a book, Campaigns of the Great War, and settled in. I wanted peace from the relic nonsense. Stayed till Mary's scream." His voice was clipped, military sharp. "The study is near," Poirot noted. "You heard nothing?" "Nothing," Sinclair said, his jaw clenching. "The storm roared like cannon fire, blotted out all else." His fingers flexed behind him, a faint tremor Poirot did not miss. Your friendship with Lord Dunraven. It had cooled, perhaps. Sinclair's gaze hardened. We survived the trenches together, but he'd changed, grown smug, clutching that relic like a trophy. We'd clashed before, old scores buried. A spark of temper flared, quickly checked. You check your watch often, Captain. What keeps you restless? Sinclair's hand stilled mid-motion, his face paling. A soldier's habit, timing matters in war. This murder's rattled me, that's all. His unease was palpable as he turned back to the window. Merci, Poirot murmured. Debts or a grudge? Threads to pursue. Poirot then crossed to Dr. Alistair Campbell, seated by the hearth, his spectacles glinting, hands folded with calm assurance. Doctor, Poirot said, you were in your room, preparing for bed, oui? Campbell nodded, his grey eyes steady. After dinner, I retired, worn from travel and Mrs. Worthington's nerves. I read a journal, then turned in. The storm kept me awake till the scream. His tone was smooth, precise. Tell me, Doctor, Poirot pressed, his grey eyes sharp. How well did you know Lord Dunraven? You worked closely on his charity, non? Campbell's hands tightened briefly on his knees, his smile a shade too fixed. We shared a passion for the charity's work, he replied, his voice smooth but his eyes flickering, as if guarding a secret. As he spoke, his left hand absently rubbed his forearm, a gesture Poirot noted but did not yet understand. A noble cause, Poirot said, tilting his head. And yet, such endeavours can bring pressures, no? A faint scent of something medicinal, a whiff of laudanum, perhaps, drifted toward Poirot, though he dismissed it as a physician's natural aura. Campbell adjusted his spectacles, his tone steady once more. Archibald's loss is a tragedy, he said. Sincere yet threaded with tension Poirot could not ignore. The doctor's calm seemed a mask, but what lay beneath? You examined Lord Dunraven, Poirot continued. The marks. Tell me. Campbell leaned forward, clinical. Strangulation clear as day. The rope cut deep, coarse, knotted tight. He fought. His hands were bruised. Death came fast, but not instant. His words were detached, yet a shadow crossed his face. A close friend, non? You shared his passion for antiquities. Campbell's lips thinned. We did. He valued my advice on his collection. His loss stings, professionally and otherwise. Sincerity rang, but Poirot sensed restraint. And your health? An old wound, perhaps. Campbell's hands tightened briefly. Shrapnel from the war, my leg. It flares, but I manage. His smile was taut. With morphine? Poirot pressed, catching the medicinal whiff again. Campbell's calm wavered. A small dose, when needed. I'm no slave to it. His voice sharpened, defensive. Merci, Poirot said, stepping back. Too polished. Embezzlement? Or something darker? Poirot's gaze shifted to Miss Clara Fairfax, perched on a sofa, clutching her notebook, her hazel eyes darting nervously. Mademoiselle, he began gently, you were in the garden. A bold move in such weather. She swallowed, nodding. I needed air after dinner. The relic talk stifled me. I stayed near the terrace, saw nothing till I returned and heard of him. Her voice quavered. You observe much, Poirot said. What struck you that evening? She hesitated. Lady Eleanor barely glanced at the relic. Mr. Worthington hovered over it. Archibald seemed distracted, muttering about papers. Her grip tightened on the notebook. You spoke with him alone, oui? Her cheeks flushed. Briefly before dinner, he teased my last article, said I'd embellished his collection. I laughed, but he was serious. Her eyes flicked away. And later in the library, something happened? Her breath hitched. Yes, I went for a book. Someone grabbed me, a shadow. I screamed, they ran. I didn't see who. Fear laced her words. Merci, Poirot said gravely. Ambition, fear, secrets teetered. Next, Poirot turned to Mr. Charles Worthington, pacing by the fireplace, sweat beading despite the chill. Monsieur, he said, you were in the billiard room alone. Worthington nodded jerkily. After dinner, I played a few frames. Needed a break. The storm muffled everything till the scream. His voice pitched high. You wanted the relic, Poirot noted. Lord Dunraven refused? Worthington's hands shook. He wouldn't sell, called it a legacy. I offered a fortune. He laughed. Bitterness bled through. Your business prospers? Worthington's smile faltered. It's lean times. I manage. His eyes darted. Merci, Poirot said. Desperation, a motive to watch. Poirot then approached Mrs. Beatrice Worthington, twisting her pearls, tears in her eyes. Madame, he said kindly, you were knitting here? Yes, she whispered. By the fire. The storm scared me. I stayed till the scream. Your distress, it runs deeper? She dabbed her eyes. This place. Charles dragged me here. I loathe it. Her hands fluttered. Merci, Poirot said. A fragile lie, perhaps an affair. Finally, Poirot addressed the servants by the door. Mr. Higgins, pale, said, I was in the pantry, polishing silver with Mrs. McTavish and Mary. The cook nodded stoutly, and Mary shuddered. I found him. Old Tom, the groundskeeper, muttered. Saw a shadow by the boathouse earlier. Couldn't tell who. Merci, Poirot said, his mind whirring. Poirot retreated to the study, the silence wrapping around him like a cloak. The desk lay cluttered with papers, the air still tinged with the faint, elusive scent of laudanum, a whisper of something yet unexplained. He stood motionless, his mind threading together the day's revelations, Lady Eleanor's veiled detachment, Sinclair's suppressed fire, Campbell's calculated calm, Fairfax's fragile nerves, Worthington's strained desperation, and the servant's quiet dread. Each word, each gesture, hinted at a truth just beyond reach. The storm raged on outside, a mirror to the danger lurking within these walls. Poirot's gaze hardened as he turned toward the door, his certainty growing. The killer was near, and the next move must be his own. Chapter 5. Secrets and Suspicions. The storm's relentless assault battered Dunraven Manor, its wails threading through the night like a harbinger of doom. Hercule Poirot stood motionless in the study, his piercing gaze cutting through the dimness, where shadows clung to the walls like silent conspirators. The air hung heavy with the musk of burnt embers and secrets yet untold, drawing his meticulous mind into the web of the evening's dark enigma. His keen eyes, sharp as a falcon's, swept the room once more, missing nothing. The desk bore the chaos of Lord Dunraven's final moments, scattered papers, a pen abandoned mid-thought, a half-written note proclaiming, I cannot ignore what I have discovered. The truth must— The words broke off, a silent testament to an interrupted revelation. But it was the fireplace that drew Poirot's attention now. A faint wisp of ash danced in the draught, a detail he had noted earlier but had yet to explore fully. Kneeling by the hearth, he took up a poker with gloved hands, his movements precise and deliberate, and sifted through the charred remains. Among the ashes, his fingers closed on a fragment of paper, its edges blackened, but a few words still legible. Your betrayal shall not stand. Poirot's moustache twitched as he held the scrap to the light, his mind igniting with possibilities. The ink was bold, the handwriting sharp with anger, a message of retribution. A betrayal, then, grievous enough to provoke such a threat. Had Lord Dunraven uncovered a wrong so dire it cost him his life? And who among this eclectic assembly had penned these words, or acted upon them? Poirot slipped the fragment into his pocket, a vital clue that demanded careful consideration, its meaning tantalizingly ambiguous, yet heavy with portent. As he rose, the door creaked open, admitting Mr. Higgins, the butler, his gaunt frame silhouetted against the hall's flickering light. His face, usually a mask of stoic duty, was pale and drawn, his hands clasped nervously before him. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice trembling faintly, "I thought you might need assistance. The household is restless." Poirot regarded him with a steady gaze, his tone courteous yet firm. "Merci, Monsieur Higgins, but I must insist the room remain undisturbed. Every detail is a thread in this tapestry of murder." He paused, noting the butler's hesitation. "You seem troubled, mon ami. Is there something you wish to share?" Higgins swallowed, his eyes darting to the fireplace before returning to Poirot. "It's only something I remembered, sir. Yesterday Lord Dunraven spoke to me in the pantry. He said he intended to revise his will. Significant changes, he called them. He seemed agitated, as though a burden weighed upon him." Poirot's eyes narrowed, a spark of interest flaring. "Significant changes, you say? Did he elaborate?" "No, sir," Higgins replied, shaking his head. "He was distracted, muttering about trust and debts unpaid. I thought little of it then, but now—" His voice trailed off, the implication hanging between them. "Most valuable, Monsieur Higgins," Poirot said, his mind racing. "A revised will, a betrayal uncovered. Could this be the spark that ignited the fatal flame? You have done well to tell me this. Now please ensure the others remain in their quarters." Higgins nodded and withdrew, leaving Poirot to his thoughts. He turned back to the desk, the unfinished note and the burned fragment aligning like stars in a constellation of suspicion. A truth Lord Dunraven could not ignore, a betrayal that would not stand, threads that wove toward a motive yet unseen. A soft knock interrupted his reverie. Miss Clara Fairfax stood at the threshold, her youthful face pale beneath a cascade of dark hair, her hazel eyes bright with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She clutched her shawl tightly, as though it might shield her from the night's horrors. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice unsteady, "I couldn't sleep. The storm, and what I saw near the boathouse, it haunts me." Poirot gestured for her to enter, his demeanour gentle yet probing. "Come, mademoiselle, tell me again of this sighting. Every detail may illuminate the shadows." She stepped forward, her breath quickening. "It was just before dinner in the garden. The storm was brewing, but I needed air. I saw a figure moving near the boathouse, furtive like they didn't want to be seen. I thought it was old Tom securing the boats, but now I'm not certain. The darkness and the wind, it blurred everything." Poirot leaned closer, his voice soft but insistent. "And this figure, what did they carry, perhaps?" She frowned, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I think, yes, something in their hand. A bundle, maybe? It was too dim to tell. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, could it have been the rope?" Her hands twisted in her shawl, betraying her agitation. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle," Poirot said, his tone soothing yet firm. "It is possible, but we must not leap ahead of the facts. Your observation is a gift to this investigation. Did you see their face?" "No," she admitted, her shoulders slumping. "The storm swallowed them up. I should have looked closer." "You have done well," Poirot assured her. "Return to your room now and rest if you can. The truth will not elude us." She nodded, offering a tremulous smile before departing, her footsteps echoing faintly down the hall. Poirot sat at the desk, the charred fragment and the half-written note spread before him. The boathouse again, linked to the rope, now to a shadowy figure, and Higgins' revelation of the will, hinting at shifting fortunes and broken trust. His thoughts turned to the charity Lord Dunraven championed, a cause shared with Dr. Campbell. Had the master of Dunraven Manor discovered discrepancies in its funds, a betrayal by one he trusted? The letter's words burned in his mind. Your betrayal shall not stand. A confrontation, perhaps, in this very room, sealed with a rope from the boathouse. The pieces were aligning, yet the picture remained veiled, a mosaic of secrets and suspicions. Poirot paused at the threshold, the storm's rage a distant echo to the tumult within his mind. The manor's corridors loomed ahead, a labyrinth of whispers and half-truths awaiting his scrutiny. With a measured step he ventured forth, the weight of unseen eyes upon him, certain that the night held more yet to confess. Chapter 6. The Attack. The storm's wrath descended upon St. Kilda's Rock with unyielding ferocity, its gales tearing at Dunraven Manor as though the elements themselves sought vengeance upon the ancient edifice. The night had deepened, wrapping the isolated estate in a shroud of darkness, pierced only by the wind's mournful lament, a sound that seemed to echo the unease festering within its walls. Hercule Poirot had withdrawn to his chamber, yet sleep eluded him. His mind, sharp and restless, turned over the day's shadows. Whispers of secrets half revealed, threads of treachery yet unwoven. Across the corridor, Miss Clara Fairfax paced her room, her movements betraying a disquiet that matched the tempest without. The storm's ceaseless howl rattled the panes, conjuring anew the fleeting figure she had glimpsed near the boathouse, a phantom swallowed by the tumult, yet its memory clung to her like a chill she could not shake. What had she truly seen? The question gnawed at her, a splinter of doubt driving her from the safety of her chamber. With a shiver, she drew her shawl close and ventured into the hall, her steps guided toward the library, where the promise of quiet pages might quell the storm within her mind. The manor, however, offered no such peace. Its silence was a heavy thing, laden with the weight of unseen eyes. The gas lamps flickered dimly, casting long shadows that danced along the walls as she descended the grand staircase. Portraits of stern Dunraven ancestors watched her passage, their painted eyes heavy with silent judgment, amplifying the sense of isolation that clung to the storm-bound island. The library door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hall. Miss Fairfax pushed it open and stepped inside, the scent of old leather and polished wood enveloping her like a familiar embrace. The room was a cavern of shadows, its oak-panelled walls lined with rows of leather-bound volumes that stretched toward the ceiling. A mahogany desk sat in one corner, its surface strewn with papers, while a bookshelf nearby was subtly misaligned, as if guarding a secret. The gas lamps cast a feeble glow, their flames trembling against the storm's distant roar, now muffled by the thick walls. She moved toward the shelves, her fingers brushing the spines of the books as she sought something, anything, to quiet her thoughts. The stillness was uncanny, a stark contrast to the tempest beyond, and a faint prickling crept up her spine. Had she heard a sound, a soft shuffle, like fabric brushing wood? She turned, her heart quickening, but saw only the flicker of shadows cast by the lamps. "Nerves," she muttered, shaking her head, and reached for a volume of Shelley's poetry. Then a movement. A fleeting shadow darted between the shelves. Before she could cry out, a figure lunged from the darkness, hands seizing her arm with brutal force. Terror surged through her as she twisted away, but the grip tightened, yanking her backward toward the desk. She gasped, clawing at her assailant, her nails raking against coarse fabric, and screamed. a piercing sound that shattered the library's silence. The figure dragged her, their strength unyielding, but in a desperate surge she kicked out, her foot striking something solid. A grunt escaped her attacker, their hold faltering just enough for her to wrench free. She stumbled back, crashing against the desk, her breath ragged as she screamed again, louder this time. The shadow hesitated, then fled, vanishing into the darkness as swiftly as it had emerged. Miss Fairfax collapsed against the desk, her legs trembling, her heart hammering in her chest, the poetry book forgotten on the floor. Footsteps thundered in the corridor, and the door burst open. Hercule Poirot entered first, his small frame moving with surprising agility, followed by Captain James Sinclair and Mr. Higgins, the butler. Their faces registered alarm as they took in the scene. Miss Fairfax, pale and dishevelled, clutching her arm, the room's stillness now fractured by her gasps. "Mademoiselle!" Poirot exclaimed, hastening to her side with a swiftness that belied his neat appearance. "What has happened?" She gripped the desk for support, her voice trembling. "Someone attacked me. A shadow. They grabbed me from behind. I screamed, fought, and they ran." Her eyes were wide with fear, tears threatening to spill. Poirot's gaze sharpened, sweeping the library with clinical precision. "Did you see their face, mademoiselle? Any mark to identify them?" She shook her head, her breath hitching. "No, it was too dark. Just a shadow, strong and quick. I thought—" She faltered, swallowing hard. "I thought they meant to silence me." Captain Sinclair stepped forward, his face grim, fists clenched. "We must search the manor at once. The devil can't have gone far in this storm." "Non, Captain," Poirot interjected, his tone calm yet commanding as he raised a hand. "A search now would be futile. The storm and the manor's labyrinth offer too many hiding places. The killer is cunning. They will have melted into the shadows. We must instead seek what they have left behind." He turned to Miss Fairfax, his expression softening. "You are safe now, mademoiselle. Tell me all, from your entry here." She drew a shuddering breath, recounting her restless decision to visit the library, the eerie quiet, the fleeting shadow, and the sudden assault. As she spoke, Poirot moved about the room, his keen eyes scanning every detail. He paused by the misaligned bookshelf, his fingers tracing its edge, but it yielded no secrets. Then, near the desk, he crouched, his attention caught by a small object on the floor, a torn scrap of dark wool snagged on the desk's corner during her struggle. He lifted it with a gloved hand, holding it to the flickering light, his mustache twitching thoughtfully. "This, perhaps, from the attacker's clothing?" he mused aloud. Miss Fairfax nodded faintly, her voice barely a whisper. "I clawed at them. It could be mine tore it." Poirot slipped the fabric into his pocket, his mind racing. The attack was no random act. It was a calculated strike by a killer desperate to protect their secret. Miss Fairfax's sighting near the boathouse had marked her as a threat, her knowledge, however vague, endangering the murderer's concealment. He turned to the others. "This incident confirms the danger among us. The killer grows bold, and we must be vigilant. Mademoiselle Fairfax, you must not be alone again. Captain Sinclair, perhaps you could escort her to her room?" Sinclair nodded curtly, offering his arm to the shaken journalist, who accepted it with a grateful murmur. As they departed, Mr. Higgins lingered, his face etched with worry. "Shall I fetch Dr. Campbell, sir?" he asked. "Non," Poirot replied. "Let her rest. We shall speak more tomorrow." The butler withdrew, leaving Poirot alone in the library, the storm's distant roar a haunting backdrop. He stood motionless, the scrap of wool a tangible link to the unseen assailant. The attack had shifted the investigation's tenor. The killer was rattled, their composure fraying under the weight of their crime. yet desperation made them perilous, a cornered beast ready to strike again. Poirot remained alone in the library, the faint glow of the gas lamps casting uncertain light upon the shelves, where shadows seemed to shift and whisper. His fingers brushed the scrap of wool within his pocket, a mute witness to the violence that had shattered the room's stillness. His eyes lingered on the misaligned bookshelf, its subtle discord a riddle yet unsolved, then drifted to the desk, where Miss Fairfax's terror had left its mark. The storm's distant rumble rolled through the silence, a reminder of the chaos beyond and within. With a measured step, he turned toward the door, the weight of unseen watchers pressing upon him. The night stretched ahead, vast and treacherous, and the manor held its secrets close, as though daring him to pry them free. Chapter 7. The Boathouse Clue. The tempest's wrath enveloped St. Kilda's rock, its gales shrieking through the night as though the very spirits of the isle wailed in torment. Beyond the stout walls of Dunraven Manor, the sea hurled itself against the cliffs, a relentless roar that sealed the household in a prison of nature's making. Hercule Poirot stood motionless by the drawing-room window, his keen grey eyes piercing the storm's tumult, though his thoughts were not swayed by its chaos. The isolation of this Scottish retreat pressed upon him, a silent conspirator in the dark deeds that had unfolded. Amidst the clamour of wind and wave, one notion held his mind with singular insistence: the boathouse, that forsaken outpost where shadows might yet yield their secrets. With a measured gesture, he rang the bell, his resolve as unyielding as the storm itself. The truth, he mused, cared little for the caprices of weather. Mr. Higgins, the gaunt butler, appeared, his face etched with the strain of the past days. "Monsieur Higgins," Poirot said, his voice calm yet authoritative, "I require old Tom's assistance. We must examine the boathouse." Higgins' eyes widened, darting to the storm-lashed panes. "Now, sir? The path is treacherous in this gale." "Oui, but the truth doesn't wait for fair skies," Poirot replied, fastening his overcoat with meticulous care. "Please fetch him." Moments later, old Tom shuffled in, his weathered frame stooped beneath a dripping oilskin coat, his cap clutched in gnarled hands. His rheumy eyes flickered with unease as he met Poirot's gaze. "You want the boathouse in this, sir?" he asked, his Scots burr thickened by disbelief. "Indeed," Poirot affirmed, adjusting his hat against the wind's inevitable assault. "You saw a figure there during the storm, non? Returning may sharpen your recollection." Old Tom nodded grudgingly, pulling his cap low. "Aye, I'll come, but watch your step. The cliff's hungry tonight." They stepped into the tempest, the wind snatching at their coats with predatory glee. The path to the boathouse was a narrow, twisting ribbon along the cliff's edge, its stones slick with rain and moss, the drop to the churning sea below a constant threat. Poirot moved with surprising deftness, his patent leather shoes finding purchase where lesser men might falter, his eyes scanning the ground for signs left by the mysterious figure. Old Tom led the way, his lantern swinging wildly, its feeble light casting eerie shadows among the tangled hedges that flanked their route. The boathouse emerged from the storm's shroud, a squat, weathered structure perched precariously at the water's edge. Its wooden walls groaned under the wind's battering, and the door rattled on its hinges as old Tom wrestled it open. They slipped inside, the air thick with the scent of salt, damp wood, and the faint tang of tar. Ropes hung in coils from pegs along the walls, and a small rowboat rested on its side, its hull glistening wetly in the lantern's glow. The space was dim and cluttered, a haven for secrets. Poirot's gaze swept the room with clinical precision, missing nothing. He moved to a rough-hewn workbench in the corner where tools lay scattered, a hammer, a coil of wire, and a pair of heavy shears, their blades glinting dully in the flickering light. His breath caught as he crouched beside them, his gloved fingers hovering over the shears. There, Snagged in the hinge was a single coarse thread, its fibres unmistakable. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, a thrill of discovery coursing through him. With delicate care he extracted the thread, holding it aloft in the lantern's beam. It matched the rope that had claimed Lord Dunraven's life, a fragment of the murder weapon's preparation, left behind by a careless hand. This was no mere coincidence. It was a cornerstone of truth. He turned to old Tom, who watched with wide, wary eyes. "This figure you saw, mon ami, what did they wear? Recall every detail." Old Tom scratched his grizzled chin, his brow furrowing as he strained against the haze of memory. "'Twas dark, sir, and the rain blurred all, but a long coat, dark like. Moved quick they did, as if the devil chased 'em." Poirot nodded, slipping the thread into his pocket with a faint smile. "Most illuminating, old Tom. This thread, it is a key to unlock the shadows." The return to the manor was a battle against the storm's fury, the wind clawing at them as they retraced their perilous path. Poirot's mind blazed with the significance of his find. The shears had cut the rope, and the thread placed the killer at the scene of its crafting. But who among the household had braved the storm to visit the boathouse? Back in the drawing-room, Poirot found Captain James Sinclair by the fire, his stern face shadowed as he stared into the flames. "Captain," Poirot said, his tone conversational yet pointed, "you are a man accustomed to the elements. Did you perhaps venture to the boathouse yesterday?" Sinclair's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "No, Monsieur Poirot, I was in the library, as I've said. Why do you ask?" Poirot's smile was faint, disarming. A thread from the murder rope was found there, caught in shears. The killer prepared their weapon in that place. Sinclair's posture stiffened, but he held Poirot's gaze. "I've no business with ropes or boathouses. You're barking up the wrong tree." His voice was gruff, his silence afterward a wall Poirot could not yet pierce. In the stillness of his chamber, Poirot sat before a modest table, the coarse thread from the boathouse resting beside a scrap of fine wool, torn from an unseen assailant's garb. Each fragment spoke in whispers, one of nautical grit, the other of refined menace. Yet together they hinted at a figure shrouded in the manor's gloom. Beyond the window, the storm raged unabated, its ferocity a sombre echo of the tension coiled within these walls. Poirot's thoughts turned briefly to a long dark coat glimpsed in passing, its wearer's composure a mask too finely wrought. The strands of the mystery were drawing closer, though the final knot eluded him still. Rising with a quiet resolve, he cast a final glance at the tempest's fury. The path to justice was perilous, but Hercule Poirot knew well that even the darkest night must yield to the dawn. Chapter 8. The Revelation of the Killer. The storm's fury had begun to wane, its once deafening roar now a distant murmur as dawn's pale fingers crept over the horizon. Within Dunraven Manor, the drawing-room held its breath, the air thick with unspoken dread. The suspects stood in a tense tableau around the hearth, their faces etched with fear, defiance, or feigned calm. Hercule Poirot stepped forward, his small frame commanding the space with an authority that silenced the room. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a steady thread in the stillness. "We stand on the precipice of truth. The threads of this dark tapestry are laid bare, and the one who wove them shall be revealed." A ripple of unease stirred the room, glances darting like shadows, but Poirot raised a hand, commanding silence. "We shall proceed with method, as is my custom, for justice demands precision. Let us examine the clues, each a thread in this intricate web, and see where they lead." Poirot reached into his coat pocket with theatrical deliberation, withdrawing a small envelope. From it, He extracted a coarse, weathered thread, holding it aloft so it caught the firelight's gleam. First, the murder weapon, a nautical rope, not native to this manor, but drawn from the boathouse. I visited that forsaken place myself, mes amis. The air thick with damp, the scent of salt and decay clinging to every surface, the rusty shears lying abandoned on a workbench. And there, snagged in their blades, I found this. He paused, letting the silence stretch, his gaze sweeping the room like a searchlight. Old Tom, our steadfast groundskeeper, glimpsed a figure near the boathouse during the storm's height, a silhouette moving with purpose through the gale. Miss Fairfax, too, saw someone there before dinner, a shadow swallowed by the tempest's roar. But who among you ventured into that chaos to sever this rope? Captain Sinclair shifted, his gravelly voice breaking the hush. Plenty of us have coats, Poirot. The boathouse isn't locked. Old Tom, Worthington, even I could have gone there. Poirot inclined his head, a faint smile flickering beneath his moustache. Oui, Captain. A point well made. Many coats, indeed. Yours of rugged wool, old Tom's oilskin battered by years at sea, Monsieur Worthington's fine tweed tailored in London. And yet... He stepped toward Dr. Campbell, his eyes narrowing to pinpoints. I have compared this thread to every garment in this house. Its texture, its muted hue, it matches but one, the coat of Dr. Alistair Campbell. A chorus of gasps shattered the stillness, and Campbell's jaw tightened, though he maintained his rigid posture, hands clasped with forced calm. Ridiculous, he said, his tone steady but laced with strain. That thread could have brushed against me anywhere, caught on a sleeve in passing. Poirot shook his head, his voice soft yet unyielding. Non, doctor. I have inspected each coat with the precision of a scientist, every seam, every fibre. This thread is no casual visitor. It is woven into the very fabric of your garment. You who claimed solitary walks to the boathouse for reflection had opportunity and means to prepare this rope. Next, Poirot produced a charred scrap of paper, its edges curling from flame but its words searingly clear. Your betrayal shall not stand. He held it high, his tone deepening with gravitas. Second, the motive. In the study's fireplace I retrieved this. A letter torched in panic, yet not wholly consumed. It speaks of betrayal, a wound Lord Dunraven could not abide. He began to pace, hands clasped behind him, his steps measured as his voice wove the tale. Lord Dunraven devoted himself to a charity, a noble cause he shared with Dr. Campbell, a trusted board member. But what if this altruism hid a festering secret? I have pored over the ledgers, mes amis, pages of figures, meticulously kept, yet riddled with gaps. Funds vanished, disguised with cunning, and Lord Dunraven, on the cusp of a grand donation, uncovered the theft. Mr. Worthington blanched, his voice trembling. I've had debts, yes, crushing ones, but I'd never stoop to stealing from a charity. Poirot pivoted to him, his gaze piercing. Your debts are no secret, Monsieur Worthington, and they gnaw at you. For a moment I considered you. Your desperation might have driven such an act. But these losses... He turned back to Campbell, producing a ledger page marked with red ink. They are subtle, systematic, the work of a mind accustomed to precision. Doctor, you had the access, the skill. These discrepancies trace to your stewardship, and that night, Lord Dunraven confronted you with this very page. Did he not? Campbell leaned forward, his spectacles glinting fiercely. This is baseless conjecture. Archibald trusted me. I served that charity with honour. Trusted you, oui, Poirot countered, his tone like chilled steel, until he could trust no longer. In his desk I found a note in his hand. I cannot ignore what I have discovered, demanding restitution or exposure. For you, This spelled ruin. Your finances, your standing, your career. You could not permit it. Poirot's eyes drifted to Miss Fairfax, who shrank slightly, her hazel gaze clouded with fear. Third, the attack on Mademoiselle Fairfax in the library. She saw a figure near the boathouse, a fleeting shape, and the killer feared her memory might sharpen into recognition. He approached her, his voice softening with a rare warmth. Mademoiselle, you described your assailant, strong, swift, yet marked by a subtle limp, a legacy of an old injury. I ask you now, before us all, to demonstrate what you felt. Show us how he moved. Miss Fairfax hesitated, then rose, her hands trembling as she took a step. She mimicked the assailant's gait, a quick stride, then a falter, a slight drag of one leg. It was like this, she whispered. In the dark, when he stumbled against the shelf. I felt it. Poirot nodded, turning to the room. And who among us carries such a mark? A scar of war? Dr. Campbell. He drew forth a scrap of dark wool, holding it beside the thread. In her struggle, she tore this from her attacker, a perfect match to the doctor's coat, the same coat bearing the boathouse thread. Campbell shot to his feet, his composure fraying. This is madness. I was in my room that night. I'd no cause to harm her. Poirot's voice cut like a blade. But you did, Doctor. She saw you near the boathouse, and your fear of exposure drove you to act. The limp, the wool, these are no tricks of chance. The room seemed to hold its breath as Poirot advanced, his small frame towering with authority. And now, the final thread. Throughout this affair, I have watched you, Doctor. At dinner, your hands shook as you lifted your glass, a tremor not of nerves, but of need. On your cuff, a faint stain of laudanum lingered, its medicinal tang unmistakable. In the lamplight, your pupils betrayed you, dilated beyond reason. These are the signs of a man bound to a secret. A morphine addiction, born of your war wound, which has devoured your resources. A stunned silence broke into gasps, the revelation landing like a thunderbolt. Campbell's face drained to ash, his hands gripping his chair as if to anchor himself. You have no proof, he stammered, his voice splintering. Poirot's smile was faint, triumphant. But I do, Doctor. Recall the night we played cards. Your hands faltered and you excused yourself, a sheen of sweat on your brow. The stolen funds were not mere avarice. They fed this craving. Lord Dunraven's threat imperiled not just your name, but your very lifeline. You killed to protect it. Poirot paused, his gaze sweeping the room once more. Yet, mes amis, I confess I wavered. Could it have been Captain Sinclair with his soldier's strength and access to the boathouse? None. His coat bore no trace, and his honour, though stern, is intact. Or Monsieur Worthington driven by debt? None again. His losses are too chaotic, not the work of a thief so precise. No, the little grey cells return always to you, Dr. Campbell. Campbell's voice rose, ragged with desperation. You twist everything. I'm no murderer. I cared for Archibald. Then why? Poirot pressed, relentless. Did you burn that letter? Why did you strike at Miss Fairfax? Why does every clue circle back to you? Campbell collapsed back into his chair, his spectacles slipping as his resolve shattered. Enough, he whispered, his voice a broken thread. It's true, all of it. The pain. After the war, the morphine was my solace. I took from the charity, small amounts at first, to buy it. Archibald found out. He was furious, said he'd expose me. That night, I pleaded, but he turned his back. I went to the boathouse in the storm, cut the rope. I didn't mean to plan it, but when I returned and he scorned me again, I snapped. The confession hung in the air, a raw wound laid bare. Lady Eleanor's stare was arctic, Captain Sinclair's fists clenched, and Miss Fairfax pressed her notebook to her chest, eyes brimming with tears. Poirot turned to Mr. Higgins, his tone calm yet resolute. "Monsieur Higgins, please secure Dr. Campbell in a locked room until the constable arrives. The study, with its sturdy bolt, will serve. Captain Sinclair, your discipline is needed. Stand guard." Higgins nodded, pale but determined. "Right away, Monsieur Poirot." He gestured for Campbell to rise, and the doctor complied, his frame slumped in defeat. Sinclair squared his shoulders, his voice firm. "He won't stir an inch under my watch." "Merci," Poirot said. "And, Monsieur Higgins, provide food and water, nothing more. He is no longer a guest but a prisoner." As Campbell was led away, his footsteps echoing heavily, the room seemed to exhale, the immediate danger quelled, though the night's weight lingered. In the quiet that followed, Poirot observed Lady Eleanor's subtle adjustment of her shawl, her fingers betraying a faint tremble. Captain Sinclair, standing by the door, allowed his gaze to rest on her for a heartbeat longer than propriety allowed, a silent communication passing between them before he averted his eyes, his posture stiffening. Mr. Higgins returned shortly, his voice steady, despite a faint quiver. "The constable will come when the storm lifts, Monsieur Poirot." "Oui," Poirot replied, gazing at the window where dawn's light pierced the gloom. As the last echoes of footsteps faded, Poirot remained, his gaze lingering on the fire's dying embers. The manor seemed to sigh, its secrets exhumed, its shadows retreating with the storm. He turned to the window, where the first rays of dawn pierced the gloom, a quiet harbinger of the justice to come. With a final, measured glance at the room, he stepped into the corridor, the soft click of his heels a steady rhythm against the silence. The night had yielded its truths, but Hercule Poirot knew that the human heart held mysteries yet unsolved. Chapter 9. The Dawn of Truth. The tempest that had raged over St. Kilda's Rock had at last exhausted its wrath, and a tranquil dawn crept over the rugged Scottish Isle, its golden rays piercing the dissipating mists of that autumnal morning. Dunraven Manor loomed atop the cliffs, its Gothic silhouette softened by the tender light, the ivy clinging to its ancient stones, as though reluctant to release its secrets. The sea below whispered faintly, a subdued echo of its former fury, while within the manor's shadowed halls the tumult of suspicion had given way to an almost oppressive stillness. Hercule Poirot stood at the drawing-room window, his diminutive form framed against the vastness beyond, his grey eyes fixed upon the horizon where the clouds parted with a theatrical grace. The murder of Lord Archibald Dunraven was solved. Dr. Alistair Campbell unmasked as the culprit, his confession a grim tale of greed twisted by morphine's cruel grip. And yet, in this quiet aftermath, Poirot felt the weight of truths uncovered, the air thick with the sombre dignity of justice restored. A soft tread at the entrance hall broke his reverie. Mr. Higgins, the steadfast butler, appeared, his gaunt face weary but resolute. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice steady despite the strain of recent days, "the constable has taken Dr. Campbell into custody. The boat from the mainland bore him away at first light." Poirot nodded, his expression grave yet satisfied. "Bon. Justice has been set in motion, Monsieur Higgins. The law will now take its course." Higgins inclined his head, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "Your clarity has spared this house further darkness, sir. We are in your debt." Poirot's moustache twitched faintly, a gesture of acknowledgment tempered by humility. "It is the truth that demands service, mon ami, not I, but I am grateful for your assistance." As the butler withdrew, Poirot's gaze fell upon Lady Eleanor Dunraven, who stood at the foot of the grand staircase, her black silk gown stark against her auburn hair, pinned with severe elegance. Her emerald eyes met his, unyielding, yet shadowed by a quiet resignation. Though innocent of her husband's murder, the investigation had laid bare her clandestine affair with Captain James Sinclair, a revelation that tarnished her standing and severed her ties to the manor's legacy. "Madame," Poirot said, approaching with a respectful bow. "You prepare to depart, I presume?" Her lips curved into a wry smile, sharp, yet devoid of malice. "Indeed, Monsieur Poirot, this house holds nothing for me now, neither wealth nor warmth. My indiscretions, though not murderous, have cost me dearly. I shall seek a new path, far from these cliffs." Poirot studied her, noting the steel beneath her poise, a resilience forged in adversity. "The future, madame, is a canvas yet unpainted. May you find in it the freedom you sought." She inclined her head, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than gratitude, and ascended the staircase with measured grace, her silhouette fading into the shadows of the upper hall. Poirot turned away, his thoughts shifting to Captain Sinclair, who lingered in the dining room, his stern face a mask of introspection. The captain's gambling debts and old grudges had marked him as a suspect, but his innocence in the murder left him grappling with his own burdens, his connection to Lady Eleanor a wound yet to heal. Miss Clara Fairfax emerged from the library, her notebook tucked under her arm, her youthful vigour tempered by the ordeal. She approached Poirot, her hazel eyes bright with a mix of relief and resolve. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steadier than before, "I've drafted my article for the Antiquarian Review, not of the relic, but of this tragedy. Your work, it's extraordinary." Poirot's smile was gentle, his tone kind yet cautionary. "Write with care, mademoiselle. The truth is a powerful thing, but it must be wielded with respect for those it touches." She nodded, a flush of determination coloring her cheeks. "I will. And thank you for saving me that night." Poirot inclined his head, dismissing her gratitude with a wave of his hand. "It is my duty, nothing more. Go now, and let your words illuminate without wounding." As Miss Fairfax departed, Poirot's attention turned to Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, who stood by the entrance hall, their faces drawn with the weight of their own secrets. Mr. Worthington's illicit dealings in antiquities had come to light, though unconnected to the murder, casting a shadow over his faltering business. Mrs. Beatrice, her nervous demeanour softened by relief, clung to his arm, her affair a private burden they would carry forward. "Monsieur, madame," Poirot said, approaching them, "you too will leave this place?" Mr. Worthington nodded, his voice subdued. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. London calls, and with it, a chance to rebuild, if we can." Mrs. Beatrice's eyes met Poirot's, a flicker of gratitude within them. "Thank you for your discretion," she whispered. Poirot bowed slightly, his expression neutral. "The truth serves justice, not judgment. May you find peace in what lies ahead." They departed, their footsteps echoing faintly as they crossed the threshold into the crisp morning air. Poirot remained, his thoughts turning to the manor itself, a grand edifice haunted by its secrets, now laid bare. The Mesopotamian relic, the catalyst for this fateful gathering, rested in the study, its ancient carvings a silent witness to the human drama that had unfolded. It would remain, a treasure untouched by the tragedy, its value enduring beyond the frailties of those who sought it. Mr. Higgins returned, bearing Poirot's hat and cane with the measured deference of one who had weathered the storm alongside him. "Your boat is ready, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low yet steady. "Dunraven Manor owes you a debt it cannot repay." Poirot adjusted his hat with fastidious precision, his small hands deft and deliberate. "Non, Monsieur Higgins, it is not I who claim such debts, but the order of things restored. Let this house stand as a caution of passions unchecked and truths concealed." He stepped into the crisp air, the sun now a radiant presence above the cliffs, its light dancing upon the waves that lapped gently at the shore. The Rolls-Royce Phantom, stranded by the storm's caprice, stood silent, a monument to the chaos now past. Poirot descended to the motorboat, its engine purring softly as it awaited his command. As the craft glided from the rocky embrace of St. Kilda's Rock, Poirot turned for a final glimpse of Dunraven Manor, its spires etched against the sky like sentinels of a tale concluded. The darkness that had shrouded it had lifted, dispelled by the clarity of his little grey cells, and Dr. Campbell's treachery now bore the weight of justice. Yet in the stillness, Poirot mused upon the eternal riddle of humanity, the frailties that fester beneath decorum, the secrets that simmer until they boil over. The island faded into the haze, and Poirot's thoughts turned forward to the enigmas that lay beyond the horizon. For now Dunraven Manor rested in quietude, its chapter closed, while Hercule Poirot, ever the guardian of truth, sailed forth, his mind alight with the promise of mysteries yet unravelled. And so, as dawn's tender light breaches the storm-weary skies of St. Kilda's Rock, Dunraven Manor sheds its cloak of shadows, and the truth stands unveiled. Hercule Poirot, with his peerless intellect, has pierced the veil of deception, unmasking Dr. Alastair Campbell as the murderer of Lord Archibald Dunraven. A thread from a nautical rope, a charred fragment of a vengeful letter, the faint whiff of laudanum. These were the breadcrumbs Poirot followed through a labyrinth of betrayal and addiction. The killer's desperate grasp for secrecy, fueled by pilfered charity funds, has been laid bare, and justice now claims its due as the constable bears him away. The manor rests once more, its relic a silent witness to the frailties of the human soul, while we, dear listeners, ponder the mysteries that linger beyond the dawn. If this tale has quickened your pulse, consider subscribing to Nocturnal Tales for more midnight enigmas. Share your thoughts below. Did Poirot's little grey cells outpace your own suspicions? And if you'd care to fuel our storytelling flame, visit our Buy Me a Coffee page, link in the description. Until our next encounter, keep your lanterns lit and your wits keen. Good night.